What if the best date of your life lasted only 3 minutes and the man never even told you his name? Nora Quinn didn't expect much from another round of speed dating. As the host of a podcast dissecting modern love, she thought it would be just more content, 10 awkward conversations and one mildly funny story. But the last man she sat across from? He didn't flirt. He didn't follow the script. He just looked at her, really looked. And before walking away, he left a folded note with nothing but the address of a small, nearly forgotten bookstore hidden between glass towers. What Nora found when she followed that note would unravel everything she thought she knew about connection, trust, and what it means to be truly seen. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Nora Quinn had exactly 3 minutes to convince herself this wasn't a mistake. The folding chair beneath her wobbled. The speed dating event organizer, a woman in sequins and oversized glasses, had just clapped her hands like a cruise director and shouted, "Let the love begin." The room buzzed with hopeful strangers, overpoured wine, and nervous laughter echoing off the exposed brick walls of a faux industrial wine bar downtown. She reached down, adjusted the tiny lapel mic clip to her denim jacket, and whispered into her phone, quietly recording as always. Okay, modern love listeners, here goes nothing. 10 dates. 10 minutes total. 10 potential disasters. Or, future content. It was half a joke, half a prayer. Date 1 sat down. His name was Aaron, or maybe Eric, she couldn't hear over the music. He worked in finance, loved golf, and talked about his Tesla 3 times in 2 minutes. Interesting, she said, nodding politely. He asked if she had any quirky hobbies. She said she had a podcast. He immediately launched into a monologue about Joe Rogan. End scene. The second man handed her a business card before even sitting. Spiritual advisor, it read. He also sold essential oils and said he didn't believe in toothpaste. The third offered her a handshake, then asked, "So, what's your 5-year plan in terms of child rearing?" By the 5th table, Nora had mentally checked out. The wine helped. So did the absurdity of it all. She spoke just enough to keep the flow going, letting each man offer his pitch like he was auditioning for a reality show she didn't want to watch. She made quiet notes into her phone during breaks. Table 3, gentle mansplainer. Table 6, believes women are holograms, I think. Table 7, cute smile, but called his ex psycho within 40 seconds. By the time she reached table 10, Nora's cheeks hurt from fake smiling and her inner monologue had shifted from ironic amusement to existential dread. Then he sat down. No name tag. No eager lean in. No cheesy opening line. Just a man with calm eyes, a navy sweater, and a soft, unreadable expression. He looked different. Grounded. As if the noise around them didn't touch him. Nora blinked. "You forgot your name tag," she said, offering a tired smile. He glanced down at his lap, then back at her. "No, I didn't." That threw her. "So, you're a mystery?" "No," he said simply. "I'm just not here to pitch myself." She leaned back, intrigued. "That's a bold move for a speed dating event." "I'm not great at speed," he replied, eyes steady on hers. "Or dating." Nora tilted her head, genuinely curious now. "Then why are you here?" "I guess. I was curious what people hope to find in 10 minutes. She paused, surprised by the question. "Content," she joked, half serious. Something flickered in his expression. "Honest answer. Well, yes. I run a podcast about modern dating. This," she gestured vaguely around them, "is kind of a self-inflicted experiment." He didn't ask the podcast's name. Didn't ask for her Instagram. Didn't change his tone or flirt. Instead, he asked, "And what have you found so far?" She hesitated. No one else had asked her anything real all night. That most people don't listen. They perform. He nodded slowly. "You included?" Nora opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. The music thumped, someone laughed too loudly behind them, but for a moment there was only the space between them and the honesty of his question. The little bell rang. 3 minutes over. The final chime. He stood up calmly. Wait, she said. That's it? He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and placed it in front of her. I think we both know you're not really here for the dates. She looked at the paper but didn't open it. What is this? He gave a slight smile, not smug, not flirtatious. Just real? If you ever want to have a conversation that doesn't end in 3 minutes, he said quietly, come find me. And then he walked away. Nora sat frozen as people around her stood and laughed and collected their jackets. She glanced at the paper. Her fingers hovered before she unfolded it. Inside was no name, no number, just an address, handwritten. North and Novak Books, corner of 14th and Bell. Below it, one sentence. If you want something real, show up. For days passed before Nora looked at the note again. It stayed folded at the bottom of her coat pocket, softening at the edges, the ink slightly smudged from the heat of her hand. She'd thought about throwing it away. Then she thought about Googling the address. Then about pretending it never happened. But none of those things erased the feeling she couldn't name, the way her voice had caught in her throat when he'd asked, "You included?" No one had asked her anything all night. He had. Then left. No pitch, no ego, no name. Just that sentence. On Saturday afternoon, wrapped in her favorite green scarf and overthinking every step, Nora found herself standing on the corner of 14th and Bell. At first, she didn't see it. The street was a canyon of polished glass buildings, cafe chains, and tech offices. But then, tucked between a dry cleaner and a shuttered juice bar, she saw it, North and Novak Books. Small, weathered, the kind of place that looked like it refused to die. The window display was messy but charming, stacked paperbacks, a plush narwhal toy, a ceramic owl, and a sign in uneven handwriting. Open, but only if you mean it. Nora smiled despite herself and pushed the door open. A tiny bell rang overhead. Warm air and the scent of old paper and cinnamon wrapped around her instantly. Jazz played low from a record player in the back. She took a few quiet steps inside. Bookshelves towered high and close together, creating a maze of stories. Handwritten tags peeked out from the spines, crushed my heart in the best way. Read this if you like quiet revolutions, don't trust the narrator. She wandered, unsure if he'd even be here. Unsure if she wanted him to be. Then she saw him behind the counter near the back. Dark sweater, sleeves rolled, a book open beside him, fingers curled around a chipped mug. He looked up. Their eyes met. Hi, she said, a little breathless. He stood up slowly. You found it. I did. And you came. I almost didn't. I would have understood. A pause. Then she walked up to the counter, setting her hand gently on a display of postcards. This place, she said, turning in a slow circle. Itsy. I know, he said softly. It's a lot. It's amazing. He nodded. My dad ran it. For 31 years. Nora looked at him, then really looked. The calm in him made more sense now. This was someone who'd grown up around books, in stories, among the dust and silence of careful people. I didn't catch your name last time, she said. He smiled slightly. Elias. Elias, she echoed. And Novak. My dad. North is me. He always said we were opposite compass points, but we worked better together. She swallowed. He's not here anymore? A beat. He passed. A while ago. Nora instinctively reached for a response, but he waved it off gently. Last few years of his life, he was sick. I helped him run the store. Then I stayed. Finished school. Started a company on the side. It did well. She raised an eyebrow. Company? He gave a small shrug. I invest in independent spaces like this one. Places with soul. We help preserve what matters before it's bulldozed and replaced with whatever's next. She was quiet a moment. So you're the millionaire who lives above a bookstore. His smile was tired and real. Something like that. I didn't expect that. That makes two of us. They stood in the quiet for a few seconds more, surrounded by the hush of pages and the comfort of not needing to explain. Nora walked to a nearby shelf and pulled out a worn hardcover, Winnie the Pooh. The edges were frayed, the cover slightly faded. My mom read this to me every night when I was little, she said, flipping gently through the pages. Great choice. She turned to him. I'll take it. He rang it up slowly, then handed her the receipt and the book with both hands. Nora took the receipt, fished a pen from her bag, and scribbled something on the back. Then she slid it back across the counter toward him. He glanced down. Her number. And a note. For the one who doesn't need to impress anyone. She smiled, soft, real, and turned to leave. The bell rang again as the door closed behind her. Elias stood still behind the counter, holding the receipt like it might vanish. Then, slowly, he folded it and placed it gently into the pages of her favorite book on the shelf. Just in case she came back. 3 days later, her phone buzzed just as Nora was sorting through voice notes from 3 disastrous interview pitches and 1 slightly charming submission about someone falling in love at a laundromat. Unknown number. Just 1 text. 2 mugs. A dusty chessboard. No plans. Want to come ruin that? She grinned despite herself. Then typed back. Only if there's cake. And maybe a bad poem. He answered 5 minutes later. 4 p.m. Paper and Bloom Cafe. Back table. She stared at the message for a long time before saving the number. Just Elias. No emojis. No second guessing. The cafe was exactly what she didn't expect, but somehow everything that made sense. Pressed flowers hung in frames along the wall. Old books lined the windowsills. Real china, mismatched on purpose, clinked gently in the hands of thoughtful baristas. The air smelled like cinnamon, honey, and ink. He was already there, at the back table, tucked behind a curtain of ivy and an old floor lamp. A chessboard sat between 2 mugs. One of them was already steaming. You weren't kidding, she said, sitting down. I rarely do. She smiled. I noticed. He handed her the mug. Peppermint tea with too much honey. Right? Her brows lifted. You remembered? You had a sticky honey packet stuck to your phone case. Ah, she laughed. So much for mystery. No, he said, watching her over the rim of his cup. Just noticing. She exhaled slowly. The noise of the cafe felt far away. They didn't talk about jobs or money or plans. They talked about favorite sentences, about smells they remembered from childhood, about how she'd once cried in a bookstore aisle after reading the last page of A Man Called Ove. She asked if he ever got tired of silence. He said, only when I'm with the wrong people. At one point, she reached for the pawn on the chessboard. Should I be worried? You're either a romantic or an assassin with this setup. Bit of both, he replied, deadpan. She laughed, really laughed. And he smiled, not in amusement, but in quiet recognition. Like something was unfolding between them that neither of them needed to name just yet. When the light outside began to soften into golden hour, Nora leaned back. You know, I didn't record anything today. Elias raised an eyebrow. That unusual? She nodded. It is. Did it feel like something was missing? She thought for a moment. No. Actually, it felt like something was finally off the record. He sipped his tea slowly. That sounds like a beginning. She didn't answer. Just smiled. That night, in her apartment, surrounded by soundproof panels and the blinking cursor of a blank editing window, Nora sat quietly, mic in hand. No script. No music bed. Just her voice. Sometimes you meet someone who doesn't ask you to explain your walls. They just sit beside them quietly until you're ready to take one down. This one's not for the feed. It's just for me. To remember what it feels like when silence doesn't feel like a threat but a place to rest. She didn't title the file. Didn't save it to her public folder. Instead, she opened a hidden one on her desktop and created a new folder. Not for the show. And for the first time in years, she pressed save for no one but herself. It wasn't the podcast episode that ruined everything. It was the link. A casual message forwarded to Elias from someone he barely knew, a friend of a friend who sent it with the caption. Isn't this the girl from your bookstore? The episode was titled 10 Dates in 10 Minutes, The Final Table. He clicked. Her voice, steady, warm, familiar, filled the quiet of the bookstore. Table 10 was different. No name. No game. Just a man who didn't try to impress me. And for 3 minutes, it felt like I wasn't being studied or performing. I don't know if that counts as connection. But it made the room quieter. And it made me want to follow a note, not a number. His stomach twisted. She hadn't said his name. Hadn't even described him in detail. But the words were there. Their conversation reframed. The moment that felt sacred, now something listeners could rate, replay, clip. He closed the browser without finishing. Then he sat very, very still. Nora arrived at the bookstore just after 3, holding 2 croissants and smiling like something inside her had started to bloom. She saw him through the window and waved. But he didn't wave back. The moment she stepped inside, she felt it, the shift. The subtle, terrible cold. Elias was behind the counter, posture straight, eyes unreadable. "Hey," she said softly, placing the bag on the counter. "I brought bribes." He didn't touch it. "Did you name me?" "What?" "In the podcast." Nora blinked. "What are you talking about?" He pulled out his phone, opened the browser, and tapped once. The episode loaded, paused at the halfway point. She stared at the screen. "Oh," she breathed. "I wasn't looking for it," he said calmly. "Someone sent it to me. I guess they recognized you. Or maybe they recognized me." Nora felt something hollow open inside her. "I didn't use your name," she said quickly. "I didn't even describe the bookstore. But you used the moment," he said, quiet but certain. "You turned it into something for them. Not us." "I was just," she started, then stopped. She didn't have an answer. Because she didn't know anymore what her lines were. What counted as hers? Elias looked at her, his eyes softer now, not angry, just deeply, painfully tired. "I thought I met you," he said. "But maybe I met your content." The silence stretched between them like a rope pulling tight. She opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she say? That he was right? That she hadn't meant to turn him into a story, but maybe she didn't know how not to? "I saved the episode," she whispered finally. "But I didn't publish the one that mattered. The one just for me. For us." Elias held her gaze, but his voice didn't waver. "Then why didn't you tell me that before someone else showed me?" Nora felt her breath catch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He just told the truth. And that was so much worse. She stepped back, nodding slowly. "I'm sorry." He nodded too, once, tightly. Then turned away. She walked out without saying anything else. The bell above the door jingled behind her, too bright for the weight in her chest. That night, Nora sat on her bed in silence, the blue light of her laptop flickering across her face. The file, the one she never uploaded, still sat in its folder. Not for the show. She hovered over it. Then clicked. Pressed play. There's a difference between vulnerability and exposure. One invites connection. The other invites performance. I think I got used to believing that saying something out loud made it real. But maybe silence is where real things begin. She didn't cry. But her throat ached. She minimized the file. Opened a document. Typed just one thing. For him, if he ever wants to know the version I didn't share. Then she saved it. To a flash drive. And placed it in a small brown envelope. Tomorrow, she'd slide it under the door of the bookstore. Not with a hope. Not with an apology. Just with a quiet truth. The envelope was small. Unmarked. No note. No expectation. Nora left it early in the morning, sliding it gently through the mail slot of the bookstore's side door before the city had fully woken up. Her fingers lingered for a second on the edge, and then it was gone. Inside it, a flash drive. Inside that one recording. No music. No intro. Just her voice, steady but soft. "You asked me once if I was performing. I don't know how to answer that. I think I've spent so long turning everything into something for other people. I forgot how to just let it be mine. This isn't for the feed. This is what I would have said if I hadn't been afraid you'd leave." She didn't expect him to listen. She didn't expect anything at all. For days passed. She kept busy. She edited other people's love stories. She cooked unnecessarily complicated meals she didn't finish. She tried to start a new episode and ended up staring at the blinking cursor for 38 minutes. On the 5th day, she found a small package at her doorstep. No return address. Just a single sticker on the front. Paper and bloom. Back table. Inside, the book she had bought at his store. Winnie the Pooh. But now, the inside cover had something new written in it. Thank you for trusting me with your real voice. Below it, a time. Saturday, 10 a.m. The cafe was almost empty when she arrived. Same table. Same ivy curtain. Same 2 mugs, one steaming already. Elias was there. He looked up and this time he smiled without hesitation. You came, he said. She sat down, heart thudding. You listened. I did. He paused. I thought about what you said about forgetting what was yours. I think I did the same. I thought silence was safer. But I was just hiding too. Nora looked at him carefully. And now? He reached for his mug. Now I think silence can be shared. If it's the right kind. She laughed softly. We're really bad at small talk, huh? Painfully. They sipped tea. No rush. No expectations. Then she asked, so what happens now? He looked at her, steady and sure. Now we stop turning things into stories. And just start living one. A week later, she was back at the bookstore. Not as a customer. Not even as a guest. As something in between. Elias handed her a key, not to the front door, but to the back reading room, the quiet space with worn armchairs and tall windows. She looked down at it. What's this for? For when you need somewhere to be where no one's listening but me. The podcast continued, but differently. She stopped narrating. She started listening. Real conversations. Quiet pauses. Imperfect sentences. No more segments called The Rules of Love. Just one called Still Learning. She never mentioned Elias on air. Never described the bookstore. But sometimes in the background you could hear the faint sound of pages turning. One morning she left a book open on the front table. A copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. Inside she had underlined a single sentence. Once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always. Next to it she wrote, some things aren't meant to be content. Some things are meant to be kept. Elias didn't say anything when he found it. But that night he placed a bookmark between those pages and on the back of it wrote, let's begin here. The bookstore didn't change overnight. It still creaked when you walked across the floor near the philosophy section. The same crooked ladder still leaned against the poetry shelves. The same ceramic owl on the windowsill still tilted its head like it was listening. But something had shifted. Something subtle. A second mug always sat beside the register now. And someone had added a tiny handwritten sign to the door. We're open. For what's real. Nora came in every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes more. She brought new books, baked muffins that crumbled too easily, and read aloud to the kids who came in after school. She rearranged the staff picks section and never told Elias when she snuck in titles like Eleanor Oliphant or The Midnight Library. He always noticed. He never moved them back. Some mornings she'd find a new bookmark tucked into her coat pocket with a single sentence scribbled across it. You still make silence feel warm. Page 237. You'll know why. Let's get lost today. She'd reply by leaving messages on sticky notes hidden in the spine of his favorite books. Found a sentence that reminded me of you. Still figuring out how to end a story without ruining it. You left the kettle on. Again. They never posted photos. They didn't tag each other. They didn't tell the internet. But every Friday night when the shop closed, they'd sit cross-legged on the floor behind the counter, eating takeout and arguing about books. She'd lean her head on his shoulder. He'd rest his chin on her hair. And it was enough. One rainy Tuesday, a little boy pointed at them from the children's section and asked loudly, Are you two married? Nora blinked. Elias chuckled. Not yet, she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But he keeps showing up. And she stopped recording everything, Elias added, except what matters. The boy shrugged and ran off with a copy of The Paper Bag Princess. That evening, as they locked up, Nora turned to him and said quietly, "I used to want to tell the best love story." He looked at her, curious. "And now? Now I don't even want to tell it," she said. "I just want to live it." Elias smiled. "That's how I know it's real." She reached for his hand. He took it without hesitation. They walked down the street slowly, the rain tapping on umbrellas and awnings, their steps matching without trying. At the corner of 14th and Bell, where the city buzzed louder and brighter, they stopped. And in the soft glow of the streetlight outside the bookstore, she turned to him. "I never asked," she said. "What made you leave that note?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Because something in you was quiet, even when you were talking, and I wanted to hear that part." She leaned forward, pressed her lips to his cheek, and whispered, "That part still only talks to you." Inside the bookstore, the window display had changed. A stack of second-hand love stories. A small wooden frame with a typed quote. "Not everything has to be told. Some things are meant to be kept." And beside it, a single card handwritten in black ink. "Thanks for showing up."